Welcome to the Early Wedge Tuesday Best Bet Show. I am your host, Eric Cohen. It is a big week with a lot of odds movement. We're going to talk about it all. But first of all, don't forget to like this video and make sure to subscribe to the SportsLine YouTube channel. It's where all 5 Early Wedge shows are housed. You can find the audio in the Early Wedge feed on Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts. Now, before we bring in the stars of the show, let's recap what we did last week. Hey, I got a winner with Joaquin Niemann, I guess, in Singapore at 8-1. I'll take that. Jason had Daniel Berger and Denny McCarthy top 20s. So got some nice odds there. But Sia, how about Rory McIlroy? $4.5 million. Ludwig Obert for me, 0. I'm already trailing you by $4.5 million. Richest tournament of the year. Absolutely gross. All right, let me bring in the stars of the show. Here they are on the left side of the screen. We have from CBS Sports, the golf genius, Patrick McDonald. We have the host of the Early Edge every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, the great DFS player and more, Sia Nejad. And, of course, the awesome golf expert who's everywhere and has the best stories. You can hear him on SiriusXM, and now you can find him here on the Early Wedge. It is Jason Sobel. Gentlemen, Sia, I guess we got to start with you. I mean, you just hit a $4.5 million, and you made me look really, really foolish in OAD. So you want to take your victory lap?
I mean, not really. I do want to say, Joe Neuenfeld says, I chose this over March Madness. We very much appreciate that, Joe. So here's the thing. I wanted to take Rory outright. And what I didn't realize, and this happened after our show, that I didn't realize that his number drifted from the plus 1,000, which it was when we were doing the Tuesday show, to in a lot of markets like plus 1,500. If I was able to do that over again, and it's not how it works, right? We're trying to put our bets in early, not just for this show, but we make our bets, before the lines like really crash down. If I had known Rory was going to drift to plus 1,500, I wouldn't only be celebrating the OAD, but I'd be celebrating the Rory ticket as well. Now, granted, it's plus 1,500. It's not like some 70-1 shot or something, but I feel like I lost something a little bit because I wanted to take him more in the betting market and I didn't do it.
You lost something. I lost everything with a $0 play in Ludwig and burned Ludwig Obert. So just want to point that out. All right. Yeah. Let's start out with storylines. Patrick, you know what? Jason, I'm going to start with you on this one. So last week we saw what happened to the players, JJ Spaun, Rory McIlroy. All right. They're not in this week. So how do you feel about the others that are playing that were in contention?
Yeah. So Eric, first of all, I'm going to tell Sia, always put a little. I don't care if it's like a $5, $10 play. You put something on the one and done play.
You're right.
Because you win the one and done and you get all the money and everyone's like, congratulations. And you're like, yeah, cool. I'm in first place in the one and done after 1 week. It doesn't really do me any good. You got to back that with a little outright play. Okay. Secondly, Eric, for the Players Championship last week, I know most weeks we're looking at form. We're looking for some sort of momentum. We're looking for guys to carry it over. On these long weeks where guys are dealing with the conditions, where there's a start on Sunday, the guys who are in contention, even the guys who just made the cut and were playing for the weekend and were physically and mentally exhausted, I almost move them down a notch, as opposed to most weeks when it's like, hey, so-and-so has been trending in the right direction. He's moving the right way. Now, this isn't a hard and fast rule, but I don't mind the guys who missed the cut last week and were sitting around on the couch all weekend not having to play in that.
I think that's great. The guys like Michael Kim, who had great form, 5 top 20s in a row before last week. Of course, we picked him on the show. He misses the cut, and the rest is history. All right, that's fair enough. Now, Patrick, one guy that's playing this week that I wouldn't have expected is a guy that I picked on a few season-long fantasy teams, Xander Schauffele. Not good. Why is he playing in the Valspar?
He played last year too. Come on.
Did he?
He's trying to get ready for the Masters. Are you kidding me? He only has 8 rounds under his belt. Probably his last start until the Masters. I don't think he was among some of the commitments that were rolling out today for San Antonio and Houston. And I mean, Xander Schauffele's game, by his own words, sucks right now. And he was on a pitch count. He told the doctors, hell with that. I got to get my game in order. And guess what he did over the weekend at Sawgrass? 81-77. Not really getting the game in order. Last place among those who made it to the weekend. So it's a big 4 rounds, hopefully 4 rounds for Xander Schauffele, and seeing if he can show something really in that short game category. Off the tee was just brutal. He's restarted or resumed his season at maybe the most difficult stretch on the calendar, and you're really seeing it right now. So hopefully he can get something going ahead of Augusta.
See, normally I rely on Patrick for weather reports, but today you are going to give us one. We were talking about this before the show. I've never seen a wave advantage in the betting odds like we've seen right now.
That's the thing, is when we talk about wave advantages, we're typically talking about it in a DFS context. And even though it always does affect the betting market to some degree, we've never seen such a drastic shift. I mean, Joseph Boza in the chat is a really good example of what we're looking at. And it's not uniform across books. So I think it's really important at times like this to make sure you have exposure to at least two books, like a BetMGM, for example, and a DraftKings. And I'll give you an example from both of those in a second. But Boza says, sneaky good field. I saw that Vegas couldn't pick one favorite. They have three. Tommy, JT, and Xander are all 14-1. Well, you're kind of right, depending on what book you look at, because now that we know that the AM players on Thursday are likely, not definitely, but likely to get an advantage because Thursday AM and Friday PM are going to have lesser wins than Thursday PM and Friday AM, the odds have really crashed, not just in the outright market, but literally every market, including the first round leader market and including stuff like the niche markets, like, for example, top nationality play, top in region. It's affected all of those markets. And here's a really good example of what I'm talking about in terms of making sure you have exposure to two books. Let me just tell you what DraftKings has in terms of the top 5, top 6 outright odds. Tommy Fleetwood at 11-1. Again, he's in the good wave, so he's crashed to 11-1, right? Xander Schauffele, 12-1. Sepp Straka, 16-1. All three in the good wave. Justin Thomas now at DraftKings is 20-1. Okay, so he's crashed from 14, like Joseph Boza was saying, to 20. Then you get Tom Kim. He's actually in the good wave at 22-1. Guys like Corey Connors on DraftKings have drifted to 3,500. But here's the thing. At BetMGM, completely different story. Tommy Fleetwood's still short at 12-1, but Justin Thomas, 14-1. Sepp Straka, 16-1. And if you go to Corey Connors, he's 22-1. So he's 35 on one book and he's 22 on the other book. And I noticed in the first round leader market, there wasn't as much of a shift from BetMGM versus DraftKings and FanDuel. And the important point isn't just to note that, hey, these numbers are changing because of the weather. What's important to note is that if you don't have exposure to two books, then you really have no way to get the benefit of the good number. BetMGM is assessing this one way, and DraftKings and FanDuel are assessing it a different way. And so you can take advantage of that depending on who you want to bet.
Sobel, do you buy this wave advantage, or is it just a bunch of nothing when it comes to the weekend? We're going to forget about it.
It's not nothing. And yes, when it comes to the weekend, we'll probably forget about it. So a little bit of both. I think that certainly for the first round leader market, yeah, you're going to want to look for guys who are teeing off early in the morning on Thursday because it looks like it's going to get much windier on Thursday afternoon. Over the course of 4 days, though, these guys can play catch up over the weekend. I get, even if it plays a stroke tougher, 2 strokes tougher for the Thursday PM, Friday AM wave, there's plenty of time to catch up. So I don't know that I'm going to factor that into my outright plays and my finishing position bets as much as the markets are seeming to dictate right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you are in on certain players that you like, you're going to get better numbers if they're teeing off in the afternoon. Simple as that. My storyline here, speaking of big numbers, not something that I usually do when I make picks here, but the average winner here since 2010 is 80-1. So do we take more chances away from the top of the board? Usually that's hard for me to do. I think I'm going to lean a little bit deeper. Let's not get crazy. I'm not picking crazy numbers like Patrick with Joe Highsmith at the Cognizant the other week. But nonetheless, I'm picking further away. Can you believe Tommy Fleetwood's at the top of the board? I mean, we'll talk about that later.
Hey, your list is in danger. We'll talk about it. Your list is in danger this week.
We'll talk. You know what? We've made it 3 weeks and it's clean. We'll see if it can keep going. All right, let us get into first round leaders. Sobel, you're going to start us off with a couple. Speaking of big numbers, Sobel's not cheating us this week.
Big numbers. Plus, I was just making sure that they're in the morning wave because I made these picks before we really knew about the weather situation, before everyone was talking about it, before the numbers were changing. And sometimes you just get lucky. Better to be lucky than good. I certainly got lucky with these two plays. Harry Hall is the guy that I hit on just a few weeks ago in Mexico for first round leader. He had a share of the lead with 2 others after the first day. Tends to step on the gas pedal early. It looks like Bryson, but he might chip and putt even better than Bryson does. He is at 90-1 in the first round leader market. And then Patrick's guy, we talk about him a lot here on the pod, Davis Riley, who's starting to heat up a little. We saw him play well in Puerto Rico 2 weeks ago, made the cut last week at TPC Sawgrass. I'm not ready to give him the full 4-round investment, but for 1 round, and especially the first round, Davis Riley's got a big number next to his name, teeing off at about 8:30 in the morning.
Patrick is so proud of you for that, Sobel, and I'm sure Sia is as well. Now, Sia, if we're going to play the wave advantage, there's 156 players in this event. We just cut it down to 78, and you take 4 of the 78, right?
Exactly. And that's what I do a lot of the time. So, the wave advantage is just sort of extra because I'm usually going to take morning guys anyway, because usually, obviously the course hardens typically, in the afternoon, but also usually the wind picks up too. So this is one where I'm also trying to target, although not all 4 of these guys are super early in the morning. The first 2 I'm going to give out are, I believe, or at least 2 of the 4 are kind of like one of the first sort of tee times out there. The other 2 are a little bit later in the morning, about an hour and a half into play. But yeah, that's what I did. I split. I almost week to week, I'm cutting the field in half, and then I'm choosing 4, maybe 5 from the morning wave. This time I've got 4. I've got Michael Kim. He's one of the first tee times. Oh, so I added Michael Kim late, so he's not on this chart. But just so everybody knows, Michael Kim is one of my first round leaders at plus 4,000. Then I've got Jacob Bridgman, who, if you follow this show, if you follow my picks on the early edge, I've been all over Jacob Bridgman. Joe Highsmith, of course, I'm just stealing Patrick McDonald's guy at this point, 66-1 for the first round lead. And I got to say, he has really been flashing, not just that tournament that Patrick cashed, but he's been very good. And then Danny Walker, he's a guy that I had at the Puerto Rico Open. He was one of my 4 outrights. Carl Phillips, of course, cashed for us there at 70-1, but Danny Walker has been great. Last week, he was excellent with the ball striking, but he's been pretty good, not just his few tournaments on the PGA Tour, but on the Korn Ferry Tour. This guy was like a top 25 machine, very consistent. And if you look at the ball striking from last week and from the last few weeks, I think 80-1 is very live.
Patrick, I know you didn't make any official plays here. If there's one name you just want to throw out to give us something else to bet on, who you got?
Yeah, this one, even with the odds crash, there is might be stale, $1.75 for this guy. And his name is Emiliano Grillo.
Yeah, that's a good one.
He is my first round leader come Thursday.
Right. That's
there
a good one.
Go. It pays to watch live. Don't always have the graphics, but if you're watching or listening, that's what you love this show for. Coming up next, hit a play 2 weeks in a row. Why not go back to it for a third after we hear from one of our sponsors?
Brackets are back. Play CBS Sports bracket games for a chance to win a new SUV and a trip to the 2026 Final Four. Get the CBS Sports app now to play.
So this April, CBS Sports brings you more of the Masters than ever before. 14 hours of live coverage from Augusta National on Saturday and Sunday, beginning each day at noon Eastern on Paramount Plus and continuing at 2 on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus. So, all right, Sobel, we're going to start with you here. You have been, doing pretty darn good with these matchups. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so I'm looking at a couple matchups that, again, I'm trying to target guys that I both like and guys that I'm trying to fade on the other side of it. So I'm going to start here with Steven Yeager, who had a nice tournament, a volatile tournament at TPC Sawgrass. It was like, is either really good or really bad. And even the really good stuff became really bad stuff. The really bad stuff became really good stuff. I do like him on this golf course. I think his strength is off the tee, and I'm looking at him over Adam Scott. Look, for the last couple of years, guys, I've been giving Adam Scott a lot of credit for playing in these non-major, non-signature events. And I'm like, wow, he's in his 40s now. If you'd told me 5 years ago, if you'd asked me, what do you think Adam Scott would be doing right now? I'd say, well, he's probably sitting on the beach for most of the time and then showing up for the major championships and a few other big events. He's actually grinding away. He's on the board. He's going to the White House. He's trying to figure out deals. He's taking emails and phone calls. And he's also playing stuff like the Valspar Championship, which I never would have thought he's doing. That said, I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and it seems to be having a little bit of an effect on his game. He wouldn't admit it to me, but you kind of tell. He's like, yeah, there's a lot going on. He said, I've been good with it so far, but once we get into the majors, I'm going to have to cut back on everything I'm doing because it's a lot of work off the golf course. And so he's a fade for me until he can focus on his game a little bit more, and that's just not happening right now. I know you guys like JT Poston, and I don't dislike him. He's not really a fade for me, but I think Taylor Moore is a really nice play and really all markets this week. I spoke with him this morning, has a ton of confidence at Innisbrook, a place where he won 2 years ago, and I just like his game. I think it fits this golf course. Also, a really good wind player. Anyone that grew up in Oklahoma and went to Arkansas, watch out for them in the wind, and Taylor Moore has shown that he can play really well in the wind.
Yeah, he won here 2 years ago. That nice comeback shooting a final round 67. He's a guy that I have my eye on this week, though. Poston's another one that we'll talk about later in the show. Sia, I know my don't bet list has its pluses and minuses, but a staple of that list is Cam Young. Unfortunately, I actually am betting him in something later in the show. You're betting him to miss the cut, really?
Yeah, so I guess we should start there. Although I do want to point out on the early edge, I gave out this morning, I gave out your play. Speaking of stealing plays, I'm stealing Joe Highsmith for a first-round leader, but I gave out Corey Connors top Canadian at plus 130. So I just want to point that out for everybody. And I saw you had it when I went to the rundown, so we'll just kind of like leave it at that. But one thing I didn't know in the morning, and it didn't bother me too much because I think Corey Connors' game can survive the win, but I didn't know when the tee times were this morning on the early edge. Fortunately, there's only one person in the top Canadian market, and you know this, so I just want to sort of tell everybody why I made this pick this morning, and I still like it. And it's because Adam Svensson's the only guy with the AMT time. All the other Canadians are in the afternoon. So, EC, I just want to endorse your pick. I do like Corey Connors top Canadian. I'm turning the page. Although if Nick Taylor was in this, I probably wouldn't be on this, but he's not in this. And I don't really respect the game right now of all the other Canadians. Cameron Young is interesting because if you look at his course history, which EC, I'm sure you did, you're like, okay, second place last year. That's pretty good. The thing is, he came into that tournament in pristine form. For many tournaments in a row, the ball striking was great. The approach play was great. It was the Cameron Young we fantasize about, like, oh, this is the guy, like when he first came out, like, he's going to win some tournaments. Well, this is not that Cameron Young. I mean, if you look at his history, his recent history, he's coming into this tournament in drastically different form than last year when he was coming into the Valspar. So I think it's going to be more of the same from Cameron Young, where the ball striking's not there and the short game can sometimes, the putter sometimes is flashed here and there, but I think he's going to have a tough time of it. No, by the way, he's on the wrong side of the alleged wind wave here. So I have him to miss the cut. BetMGM is offering this, and I think it's really interesting because a lot of times the make the cut stuff is like a yes option only. They're giving you the yes or the no, and I'm going to take the no on Cameron Young. Finally, I'll be quick here.
See, I just want to throw in there. Remember, Cam Young's got a championship to go win next week. Might be looking ahead.
That's very interesting too. Very interesting too. Lucas Glover minus 130 over Spieth. I love Glover's form here. I love his recent form. I listened to him on PGA Tour radio after Thursday's round. They were interviewing him. He was talking about an adjustment he was making with his putter in terms of how he was lining up putts. Seemed to work for him because that Thursday he was great. He was kind of mediocre, let's say Friday and Saturday, but on Sunday he flashed again with the putter. So I don't think that's going to hold him back too much. And Spieth's form's been too erratic. Glover's been very consistent. I'll take this is a tournament matchup, minus 130 over Jordan Spieth.
Hey, Sobel, by the way, who you got in tonight's semifinal for TGL?
Give me the Bay Club. I'll take the favorite since we had a dog last night. By the way, I missed it last night. I watched a little early and then I went out and they somehow didn't have it on at the place I was at, and I didn't see it. I came back and I went through Twitter, and every Twitter headline was New York Golf Club upsets LAGC. And I'm like, let's slow down on the upset talk. I mean, come on. I get it. One team was favored, and so by definition, the underdog won and it's an upset. Let's not get carried away here.
Patrick, are you with Sobel tonight? We're giving out golf picks for everything, and you actually, both of you guys were actually, have been to TGL, unlike Sia and me. So what do you got?
Well, I've got the season-long ATL ticket that I'm sweating.
Oh,
at I think it was like
3-1. Oh,
5-1 to 1, 4.5 to 1, something like that. So sorry if one eye's over there, one eye's over here with the March Madness model, trying to fine tune that before the real games get going after the play-in. So
we'll talk about that.
Got a little sensory blitzkrieg going on right now.
I know you.
I'm rooting for you, Patrick. I would also tell the people out there, last week we had somebody ask about hole-in-one props, and my answer to that, and Sia, you backed me on this, which is we're not betting on things that might or might not have. Like, let's use our knowledge to our advantage. Guys, don't bet TGL. I mean, if you're going to sit and watch and you're like, yeah, I'm going to throw a few bucks on it because they'll make me invested as a fan, and I went fine, but it's like, this isn't like something we're really betting on. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't.
I've got $5,000 on.
Good. Well, only $5,000 is small money for you, and so it just doesn't really mean anything.
Well, let me tell you who I would bet $5,000 on this week. It's Corey Connors, top Canadian. Listen, I've cashed this 2 weeks in a row, so why not go for the hat trick? And Sia talked about it. So he's going up against Adam Hadwin, Mackenzie Hughes, Adam Svensson, Ben Silverman. Adam Hadwin has a decent course history here, has a couple of top 10s in his last 4 appearances here, but is in not very good form. Corey Connors, on the other hand, great form, 3 top 6 finishes this season, including in each of the last 2 weeks. And the putter has actually been pretty darn good. Now, he has top 21 finishes in each of his 2 appearances here. However, those were a long time ago. So at plus 130, I'm not getting the plus 250 like we got the last 2 weeks, but I will still take it at this number as my tournament matchup. Now, somebody asked in the chat, Jeff did, Carl Phillips, top Aussie at plus 630. Now, I don't see that number. I see it top Oceania, which we know is one of Sia's favorites behind Adam Scott, Ryan Fox, Cam Davis, and then Aaron Baddeley is 16-1. Anyone have a thought on Oceania, Australia, and Carl Phillips? Patrick, you want to take this one?
No thoughts for me. There's a lot of tee times you got to look up and a lot of names I haven't even glanced at this week.
Yeah, I'll say this.
A lot of fish in the Oceania, guys.
I'll say, and by the way, the Oceania, that's going to include New Zealand and some of those islands, but it's basically Australia and New Zealand, so it can include guys like Ryan Fox. I don't love Carl Phillips here. I like him as a talent. Obviously, me and Jason hit that outright. We liked him for a reason. 230 is not even a good number. I'm confused. Some offerings only have top Oceania, some have top Aussie. Okay, my bad. I'd probably go with Adam Scott, even though I'm not a big Adam Scott guy.
Well, we know Patrick is. And we're going to let Patrick, on that note, start off with his finishing position bets with a guy that, we'll talk about in the outright section. A lot of people haven't heard of, Max McGreevy.
He might be the best, probably is the best Max right now. Maybe Grazerman? Him and Grazerman duking it out for that. No pun intended for the dookie. But this guy's playing some really good golf with 4 straight made cuts. You got the T4 at the COG, and then also the top 20 last week where his ball striking was just absolutely in fuego. Bit of a bummer. He is in that PM wave. So that number on the screen, a little stale. I think you can find a top 40 for him at plus 150. I'm just rolling with it. I'm absolutely just rolling with it. Like Wolf of Wall Street, when they're in the yacht, just going through the storm. That's me this week. We're going to ride it out. Whatever happens, happens. Hopefully the Italians pick us up if we do crash. And then Emiliano Grillo, top 20, also a little stale because he's in the morning. So this got cut. I think you can still find a 9-1 for a top 20. Pure
Big
gut
number.
play. Pure vibe play.
That's a big number for a top 20.
You look at last week, he shot 3 rounds at Sawgrass of par or better. You're probably wondering, wow, he must have had a great finish.
How was the other one?
The issue here, I was getting to it, Sobel. He shot 85 in the 3rd round. 85.
That's not good.
Could you have done better than that, Patrick? With your handicap, could you have shot better than 85?
I appreciate Sia's expert analysis there.
Yes.
Not good.
It's not good, folks.
But I am going to say, those 3 trump that one. And there has been a little crossover between the Valspar and one tournament called the Sanderson Farms Championship. Think about Malnati, right? Just last year. And he has played quite well there. He hasn't really figured out Innisbrook, but 9-1 for a top 20. I'm sending it with the good wave.
So, Patrick, at TPC Sawgrass on Saturday with your game, your scratch, do you think you could have beaten Emiliano Grillo?
Oh, I could have beaten anyone out there. Easy. Some of the efforts there.
Well, you would have beaten Will Zalatoris on the back 9. I'll tell you that.
I was scoffing at my TV.
Yeah. You would have beaten Zalatoris.
I
would not have I would have done well to break 100, I think.
Really?
Maybe like 90-ish.
If only, Patrick. If only you were creating more content, you could have gotten into the creator class.
I know.
So need
I had words. I had words with some.
I'm sure. Sobel, up to you. Michael Kim, we talked about him earlier. You're going back to the well, top 20.
Yeah, I'm going with the double narrative play here in Michael Kim and Andrew Novak. I talked off the top about, hey, I kind of give the guys who missed the cut last week and have been hot this year a little bit of a bump. Michael Kim and Andrew Novak sort of leading parallel lives right now in that over the first 2.5 months of the season, they've played pretty much the best golf of their careers. Kim at a higher level than Novak, and that's why the number is shorter, but both of them playing really good golf. Both of them missed the cut last week, and I'm sure a bunch of DFS lineups crashed because of it. And I know those were guys that a lot of people liked, especially Kim, who was way too underpriced, and that was due to just fall apart, and the bubble was going to burst at some point. But I don't mind jumping back on them this week because, again, they've been playing their best golf of their careers, really good ball striking numbers for both guys, and they should fit this golf course. So I think the numbers there are pretty good on both of them for a top 20.
See, you're going back to the top 40 market. Jacob Bridgman, who you talked about, and then Patrick's boy, Joe Highsmith. Start with either or.
Yeah, these are two kind of creative player names that this show, since it re-aired, if you will, the expanded version, we've been talking about these guys. I've been betting a lot on Jacob Bridgman in round matchups. And the thing is about Bridgman, yeah, he's not like a superstar. Like, there's some issues with his game. He can be a little inaccurate off the tee, which isn't great here, but he's got the complete game. I mean, he's doing it with the short game. He's doing it with the mid to long iron play, which is certainly going to help him here. And I'm just taking a conservative approach like I normally do with the finishing positions. I'm getting even money on a top 40. This is over at BetMGM, so this like pays the ties as well, of course. And then Joe Highsmith, same exact number. Highsmith has showed incredible upside. Obviously, Patrick had him at the 110-1. But even since then, like, you look at the weighted ball striking, you look at the weighted tee to green. Now, I will grant you I'm using kind of smaller sample sizes, but these guys have shown me enough in this field that, which is top heavy, but the rest of the way is like, it's just a bunch of guys that are, above average to average. I think Joe Highsmith is live to maybe top 20 this tournament, but top 40 is certainly in play at even money.
So I put out these bets before I saw the wave, and I got some advantages. These are updated numbers. Sobel talked to Taylor Moore. So yeah, it seems like good for a top 10. This guy, he won it a couple of years ago, and he already has finished 12th here last year, has 2 top 10s this year, Palm Springs and in my neck of the woods of Scottsdale, 7 straight made cuts and hasn't lost strokes off the tee since last August. Pretty impressive there. And in both the last 2 years, he's gained more than 5 shots against the field on approach both times. That is definitely key. So I could definitely see him have a nice weekend and get into the top 10 at a nice number there. And then Alex Smalley, listen, he has top 20s in 5 of his last 7 events with a T21 in there as well. His T14 last week would have been a lot better if he hadn't blown up, look like me on the final 2 holes, having water ball. Yeah. It's like my round on Saturday. It did not end well. And it wasn't good to begin with. T27 in 2023, and is a lot better for him now. So we're getting a nice number because of that advantage, that wave advantage. He's on the wrong side of it, but plus 230 for yet another top 20. I'll buy that. I think that makes a lot of sense. Coming up next, Sia just asked it in the chat. Will the do not bet list claim its first victim this week? Well, we'll find out after we hear from one of our sponsors.
12 teams, one epic battleground, and it's the most feared of them all, San Francisco. This city is legendary for high winds, brutal tides, and an eerie, unforgiving race course. It's all or nothing.
All right, before we get to the don't bet list, I want to talk about this before we get going here. Patrick, you and I were talking obviously before the show about your March Madness theory on how to pick teams, and I would like you to I'd like you to share that with our audience here, as they can definitely learn from your expertise there.
Is it a theory if it's been proven correct not 1 but 2 years in a row?
Okay, so ish, but okay, fair enough.
So it's quite simple. The McDonald methodology. Thank you to the boys and girls at the USPTO for giving me that one over to the big wigs at McDonald's Corporation. But it's quite simple. You just pick whatever team is more east in the matchup. And the kicker here, I was telling Troy, who's on the 1s and 2s for us tonight, that you cannot reference a map. It's purely on your knowledge. So there's some crazy names out there. I mentioned last year, Oakland. My mind goes to California. Michigan last year. Michigan. So that proved to be a big scuttlebutt for us in the first round. We got through it like we do because UConn. And you look at some of the teams this week or this year, EC, like Florida's in the mix. St. John's is in the mix. The Dukies, obviously, as well. And so it's not a coincidence the best teams in college hoops are about as far east as you can go in the U.S.
I have nothing more to add to this other than Joe in the chat who says Arizona's going to lose to Akron. That better not happen or I'm jumping off my roof. But that is one of the McDonald methods. So just keep that in mind. Speaking of methods, my method is the do not bet list. And so let's take a look at it here. We've got a few players in the field this week, including the top 3 on this list. And of course, Tommy Ladd is the favorite. Sobel, I'll let you start off with this one. Am I in danger of losing, of getting a crossed off name on this list?
Yes. Yes, you are. And it's not who you think. First of all, how is it 2025 and Tommy Fleetwood is the favorite at a PGA Tour event? If Tommy and his kids went out to play golf, I'm not sure Tommy should be the favorite. Look, what are we doing? At some point, he's played 150 times now. He can win. Yes, we all know he can win. He's capable. He's a really good player. He doesn't win, though, and so he can't be the favorite. I mean, and this is coming from a guy who bet him outright. He was my favorite outright play at the API a few weeks ago. He finished in 11th place. He played pretty well. That's what he does. He plays pretty well. You out bet him top 20 every week and take that money and roll it over the next week for another top 20. You'll probably do pretty well for a while. He's not going to win. That said, Keith Mitchell. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Guys, we haven't had enough Keith Mitchell talk since I've come on the early Wedge pod. I'm the biggest fanboy. I drive the bandwagon. His stats show a top 20 player in the world. It's going to happen at some point, I think, someday. It just hasn't. I don't know. I can't explain it. He's a top 5 driver on the PGA Tour. He was 12th in strokes gained approach last year. Even the putting's not like that bad. I mean, it's not what Corey Connors was or what Lucas Glover used to be. And yet he can't put it all together and post scores and finish on leaderboards. I don't know, but Mitchell's the guy, if anybody.
If I were to rank these in terms of most likely to win, in my opinion, to least, Keith Mitchell, after what I saw, it was the other year he blew a tournament. I can't remember which one. Was it the Cognizant or one of those that he blew on the final day where he had a nice lead and he just imploded? That's why Keith Mitchell will always be at the bottom. So no offense to Keith. I'm sure he's a great guy. I'm not picking him to win. And if he does, then I lose. Okay, let's get to our outright picks, my favorite part of the show. Jason, all right, you gave us a Keith Mitchell explanation. Why don't you give us a Luke Clanton explanation? It's an interesting at 45-1.
Look, first of all, this is a number that we wish we could have gotten on him last summer when he was top 5ing seemingly every week. He came to tee it up on the PGA Tour with a sponsor exemption. First of all, he's a better player, a more polished player right now as an amateur than Nick Dunlap was as an amateur, and a fairly similar type of field at the American Express last year. Secondly, he should be a guy that fits this golf course, drives it just about as well as anybody in this field, quite honestly. Thirdly, and most importantly for the narrative right now, he's already clinched his PGA Tour card. He's not playing for money this week. There is nothing left for Luke Clanton to do other than improve his status by going out and winning this golf tournament, getting a 2-year exemption, getting into signature events, getting into all the major championships. Why not? So I love playing Luke Clanton at this number with a free roll. He's in the PM AM wave, so he's in the tougher wave that we think starting later on Thursday. I don't love that. My other 2 plays, though, will be from the other side of the wave, the better side of the wave. But I love the number on Luke Clanton. Again, remember, last year we were looking at Luke Clanton in fields like this at 25, 35, 30-1, 35-1, 45-1, I think is a pretty good number on a kid that's got all the talent in the world. He might wind up being the most talented or top 5 most talented players in this field when it's all said and done. You put him up there with JT and Xander. That said, next on my list, a guy who I really liked over the first 2 months, and I couldn't get there outright because the number was just too short. The ball striking has been fantastic for Kurt Kitayama. We saw him win in a big field in a Florida event at Bay Hill a couple of years ago. He's now moved up to 70-1. He is in that morning wave on Thursday and Friday afternoon. I think Kitayama's a guy that can go out there and win a tournament like this, drives it really well. And then I go back to something that we heard a lot this past weekend at the Players in relation to Alex Smalley, because we talked about strokes gained total being the greatest barometer of performance that we have on the PGA Tour. And I tweeted it out. Brandel Chambly was talking about it. Number 1 on that list going into the Players was Colin Morikawa. We know how good he is. Number 2 is Rory McIlroy, enough said. Number 4 is Scotty Scheffler. In between them, was Alex Smalley. And we saw Alex Smalley playing really well on a golf course that you had to do everything really well. Number 5 on that list going into last week, and granted he missed the cut, but he didn't play badly. The scores weren't terrible. It's Nikolai Højgaard. And Nikolai Højgaard's a guy that does everything well, leads the PGA Tour in greens and regulation right now. And I just saw a little while ago, Rob Bolton from PGAtour.com had that he actually leads in putting inside 10 feet as well. That's a nice little combination to have, drives it really well. And I will tell you guys right now that me having an outright on Nikolai Højgaard, I would like to congratulate Rasmus Højgaard on his win as well, and Nikolai's going to miss the cut by 6.
Hey, Sobel, from your mouth to whoever's ears, make it happen. See ya. Michael Kim, Jacob Bridgman, Joe Highsmith, we've talked about all 3 of them on the show. Anything you want to add?
Not really. I do want to add that I think the Nikolai Højgaard play is like a perfect outright play. I think his floor is perhaps a little low, but I think his ceiling is definitely a win. This number at 80-1. And by the way, he's in the quote, again, this could change, but he's in the quote good wave as well. I think he's a really interesting DFS and outright play. So I just kind of wanted to endorse that. I might end up betting that as well. Not much to add. Michael Kim, he's played here before many times. He's had mediocre results, but I don't really care about that. I care that he's played here before. But this is obviously a new Michael Kim. It's a different Michael Kim than before. So the fact that he's been here plenty and has had a couple at least decent finishes, I like it. The number's been cut down because of what happened this morning with the market or whatever. If you can find a 40, there might still be a 40 out there, but the best I found was 33-1. Bridgman and Highsmith, the only thing I'll add to them is that I think in this field, if the wave is true and all that stuff, I think they can win. And what I do like is they both played here last year. They both missed the cut. But again, that doesn't matter to me as much, especially with these young guys. I just like that they saw the course, they played the course, and that they're in good form. They check those boxes.
Hef, you get the gold star on this week's show. Keith Mitchell did blow up at this very event last year with a 77 in round 4, 6 over. That is why Keith Mitchell is a permanent staple on this list. But
I started to get into that and kind of glossed over it. But yeah, he eagled the final hole in the 3rd round, took a 2-shot lead into Sunday, and from the very first swing looked awful the entire day. So I get it. Look, I get that's the kind of thing that gets you on these lists. I still can't look past the numbers. Sorry.
That's fair enough. I get it. Now, Patrick, you and I, there's some synergy this week. I'm not sure that's a good thing for you, but it's a good thing for me. So why don't you start us off and talk about your 3?
Yeah, so unlike Sia's guys whose numbers are crashing, mine are ballooning. They've gone the other way. All 3 of them in the PM wave. But like I said, I'm rolling with them. A lot of stale numbers here. Feels like I'm doing the Saltine Challenge or something, which I think EC we should have you do on air if one of your guys wins on the do not bet list.
Okay.
But I'm rolling with Lucas Glover, which you can find a 70-1 on after the whole odds reset, the great reckoning of the odds. Everything that Sia said about him, love him. I mean, just a pure ball striker. That's what you want this week. That's what you got with Glover. Poston, you can find an 80-1 on out there at Poston that I'm looking at right now. Iron play has been great. Putter turned the corner last week. Good enough for me. He's had a couple good starts at this tournament before. Let's hope he gets through Thursday. And then finally, Mad Max McGreevy had him at 90. And I'm going to love him at 125 if that's the case too. In that afternoon wave, playing some great golf at the moment. He was the first name I clicked, unfortunately. And he's going to be the first name I click twice as well.
I bet these last night in the parlay theory, my parlay theory. You guys know that you got to put a game with the golfer, and that's how you turn Rasmus Højgaard. Last night was 55-1 in this without Fleetwood, Schauffele, Burns, Thomas market. That's how you turn him into 175-1, and that's what I do every week. Some weeks it's great, some weeks it's not so great. But that's why you watch the early edge every Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. You get the picks for the games, and then you parlay them with the outrights on the show, and that's how you bet less, win more. I'm just telling you that right now. Patrick talked about Poston and McGreevy. Those numbers have gone up. Poston was originally like 40-1. McGreevy was like 60-1. Højgaard was 55-1 down to 35-1. I mean, maybe I'm crazy with this one. His approach game started the year great, but it's been pretty awful the last 3 events. But I'm buying low on the talent. Well, I thought I was buying low on the talent more than anything because there's no course history other than a miscut when I think he debuted on the PGA Tour here in 2021. I was just looking for a talented European who had experience playing in the wind, and It's who I round up with. So Sobel's on his brother. I'm going with Rasmus. And I hope what Sobel said earlier is correct, that we cashed one. Go ahead.
Sounds like side action to me.
I mean, we could do you want to do something? I don't know if you're familiar with showdowns and how that works on the early edge, but do you want to have a who finishes better type of showdown on this? Maybe we'll start with a friendly one to get you into it.
Friendly one to get me into it. You start getting me into embarrassing shit here on the show, and my computer's gonna turn off in a hurry. But
we're not giving him the full showdown treatment, but this is an unofficial showdown. Nikolai against Rasmus for bragging rights next week on the program. There it is. All right, right there. All right. Let us move on to the final part of our show, and that is the long shots. And I just, I hadn't scrolled this far ahead on our rundown. And of course, I get there, and the first name that I see under Patrick McDonald is,
Davis.
Who is it?
Davis Riley.
Come on. You just can't help yourself. You can't.
Riley, don't call me Davis. He is in the AM wave, so this number you can find a 200 on, which I'm obviously still playing. I'm seeing a lot of Davis Riley out there on the webs. Honestly, it makes me sick. I hate it. Like, get your own guys.
Yeah.
Okay? We've been on the Riley train going on a month now. Get the hell out of here. And so hopefully starting a new train with my guy Grillo this week, 600 to 1. You want to talk about CLV, Sia, down to 450. So for those half unit plays of mine, that makes a big difference. So I love Grillo. I don't love him. I might sort of like him this week at 450 to 500 to 600 to 1.
If you hit this, Patrick, I mean, seriously, you need to wear a crown the rest of the season. Nobody will ever top that on any golf.
Don't have to ask me twice.
I mean, we'll FedEx you one in time for the show. Sia, you're going with look at you going with a big number again this week.
Yeah, Danny Walker. I talked about him at the Puerto Rico Open. I liked his numbers then. They've only improved now. I don't think it's a super weak field, but we've seen Danny Walker in strong fields like last week. Absolutely, just the ball striking has been really, really good. Small sample size, like what he's done on the Corn Ferry Tour. Nothing phases this guy. If he's in the conversation on Sunday against somebody like Fleetwood, for example, I'm not going to say, oh my gosh, Danny Walker has to go up against Fleetwood. I'm going to say, oh my gosh, Fleetwood has to go up against somebody else. And so Danny Walker at 120 to 1, happy to play it.
By the way,
I respect. Go ahead, Sobel. Yeah.
Nobody's ever been intimidated going up against Tommy Fleetwood in the final round.
Exactly.
Just saying. Sobel, look at you with a couple of big numbers here. I like Sam Ryder this week, though. It's a nice one.
So Sam Ryder's guy that we talked about a few weeks ago, as the tour moves from the West Coast to the East Coast, he's an Orlando kid. He plays much better in these Florida events than he does out West. He usually gets off to a slow start and then starts ramping up this time of year. He's played well in Tampa before. 150 to 1's a good number on a guy that I think can win at some point in the next year or two. I've actually thought for a couple of years that he's the type of guy that can go win. I don't know that he necessarily drives it far enough on this golf course, but Peter Malnati drives it about as short as anyone. He was the Brian Campbell of last year winning here. He's the guy that I never would have picked. You could have given me 120 guesses at the Valspar. I was not getting a Malnati, just like we weren't getting a Campbell in Mexico a few weeks ago. But I don't know that Sam Ryder drives it long enough, but he does everything else pretty well, and he tends to like Florida courses. So I like him at 150 to 1. And then speaking of Florida guys, local guy from the Tampa area, played here as a collegiate from University of Mississippi a few years ago, missed the cut, but shot 70-74. He was leading the PGA Tour in strokes gained on approach shots. I've heard that's a pretty good metric to be leading the PGA Tour in. He's since dropped down a few notches, but Jackson Suber is a kid that impressed me right off the bat at the Sony Open this year. Last year, he got into, guys, remind me, was it the U.S. Open or the PGA? I remember interviewing him after one of the rounds, but John Rahm withdrew, and it was sort of a Danny Walker situation like we had last week where Super got into a group with Jordan Spieth and maybe Bryson. I can't remember who the other player was, but he was thrown into this featured group at a major, still playing the Corn Ferry Tour, and played really well. He made the cut that week, and so he's a guy that doesn't seem to get fazed by the spotlight at all, doesn't seem to get fazed by playing in front of a lot of family and friends, which he'll have out there again this week, 200 to 1, pretty good number.
Patrick, I have a trivia question for you before I give my parlay here. Emiliano Grillo and Sam Ryder have one thing in common. I'm sure among others, I know they're professional golfers, but they both did something at a PGA Tour event that is notable on the same hole. Not in the same year, but on the same hole. Do you know what it is?
They made a hole in one in your backyard, AC.
They did. I was there for that. Very good. Grillo was this year, slam dunk. I was there for Sam Ryder's in 2022. I have videos on my phone of, I was actually the only time I've ever been on 16 for the day. I was there when Sam Ryder had that beer flying everywhere, 15-minute delay, made a mockery of the game of golf.
I
was hidden. You think I'm
off, tarps off?
No, I was in the good seats that day. I was, yeah, there's no way I'm sitting out in the sun. Are you kidding? As the one time I had the good seats.
Ew.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I know you guys like to give big numbers in this segment. I like to give parlays. Some people like to criticize me for it. That's too bad. I'm going Ben Griffin, Cam Young, Jake Knapp, top 20s at 30-1. I mean, hey, listen, Sia thinks Cam Young's going to miss the cut. So that's a long shot if he makes the cut to begin with. And then Knapp and Griffin are playing some pretty good golf right now. Knapp was in contention the other week before fading after that opening round 59. And Ben Griffin is who I needed to win the Cognizant, and he didn't get it done. So let's go back to him. Just get me a top 20 in the floor, another top 20 in the Florida swing. All right, it is time for the recap screen, and that is our new favorite story time on the early Wedge Tuesday edition. Sobel story time as we look at the recap graphics. So what do you have for us this week?
I was trying to think of a good one from the Valspar Championship. I've covered this one a bunch of times, and I was racking my brain. This one's sort of off the golf course a little bit, but it's a story I tell anytime someone has a broken rangefinder and we're out on the golf course. This was probably about 12 years ago, and I snuck out, played a little hooky on Thursday or Friday morning with my buddy Ryan Lavner from Golf Channel, and we went over the island course at Innisbrook. Nice little course, and Lavner has just gotten brand new clubs. He went to the range twice, a pretty good player. And we get on the first hole. He hits one down the fairway, and I shoot it for him. I got 145, and he hits a beautiful shot right at the stick. Goes about 10 yards short. He's like, man, I felt like I flushed that. Next hole, I got 132. He hits it just short of the green. He's like, man, I feel like I'm hitting these good. All day, the exact same thing. We get up to 16. I shoot it, and I go, what's that M next to the number? He throws down his entire bag. He's like, you've been shooting me in meters all day. I've been right all over the stick. I should be 9 under. I'm like, sorry, bro. That's pretty funny, though.
So, as always, that was a fun one. And that's why I prefer when the golf course has those in the golf cart. And that way I don't have to shoot it myself because, yeah, I would probably do the same thing. This is one I wanted to dodge because it was so embarrassing for me last week. But I got to give Sia props. He was one of 36 people at the top of the new early wedge game on Splash Sports, the one and done game. He got Rory, and look at him, 4.5 million. Look at the guys, pretty good. And then there's that one at the bottom, which is really, really embarrassing. So we're going to go back to it this week. We're going to see what we have here. And Sia, all I will say is imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. And I'm not talking about you imitating me. It's the other way around. Just want to say that. So we'll let you start us off with what you got for us as your OAD pick this week.
If there were ever a time to take Tommy Fleetwood to win a tournament, it would be right now. He's on the right side of the alleged wind wave. He's got Xander kind of struggling. There's no Roy McIlroy. There's no Scotty Scheffler. Good course fit, good course history. This is the time your list gets its first cross off, because Tommy Fleetwood, listen, I don't really want to bet it. It's just a policy of mine. I'm not going to bet Tommy Fleetwood at a short number. I think this might be the week, though. Tommy Fleetwood takes it down.
Patrick, Sepp last week, I guess he was there for a while, and then Sunday just didn't make a move, but not a bad pick here, you would think.
Yeah, so hand up, forgot to sign up for one and done, as correctly predicted by yours truly. And so Josh and I are teaming up. That was the solution to the problem. Another issue came up also, though. He used Scotty Scheffler last week I used Sep Straka last week, so I'm trotting him out again. I'm going Sep, double. He's going to win this week.
Fair enough. All right, we're breaking the rules. Sobel, you should get a do-over for the Keith Mitchell. I know we talked about him enough. I mean, Tommy Fleetwood and Keith Mitchell in your first 3 weeks doing OAD. I mean, it's impressive.
Yeah, if we're getting do-overs, I'll take Rory last week then.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, look, I like Keith Mitchell. I don't know what to say. I don't know where else to take him throughout the year. He's kind of going to be verge of not getting into the signature events, and I don't know where else we kind of fit him in. He obviously fits this golf course. We'll see. I know you guys all hate him. Everybody in the chat hates him. Everybody in the whole world hates Keith Mitchell. Cashmere Keith, I'm rolling with him.
You know, I'm $4.5 million behind Sia in the one and done challenge, and I will end the week one way or the other. $4.5 million behind Sia Nejad in the one and done challenge. And
that's,
you know what?
Make up ground right there.
I'm just gonna say this. I mean, we're gonna make up ground. Well, maybe not, but I'm gonna try later on. At this point, there's no other place I'm using Tommy Fleetwood. Even at I'm not using him for the Open Championship or in Canada. I mean, even though those are probably the two tournaments that are outside the United States, along with the Genesis overseas. I mean, where else are you going to use Fleetwood? You got to use him. He's probably going to top 10. He's probably going to give the leaderboard a run on Sunday, but we know he's not going to win. But I'll take my 700, 800,000. It's better than zero, and I'll catch up on you, Sia, another time. Just want to say that. Imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. All right, any final words from the crew? Patrick, Sia, Sobel, anybody have anything to say about the Valspar? Nope, we're all good. Here.
Well, I'll say this. I'll say, we started the show with talking about, like, again, I say in alleged weather wind advantage. It's only Tuesday. Like, this could completely change, or it could kind of fritter away, or could pour over into both waves to some degree, or it could rain and we have a postponement. Like, there's a lot of things, but it does make sense if you're playing DFS and if you're betting to at least know where it's all at. Wednesday night, and maybe on the SportsLine Discord, we can kind of go in there and I can jump in there tomorrow night and at least maybe assess what I'm hearing, because I'm not going to necessarily look at radar, but I'm going to listen to other people who do that on a regular basis. And so, when you're making DFS lineups or maybe last minute bets and things of that nature, it's good to know if this is really going to be a huge wind advantage. We can't really fully assess it until probably tomorrow night.
If you're a SportsLine member and you are not in the Discord, you're missing out. C is giving great tidbits along with our other experts, so make sure to sync up. This is a big week with March Madness, so join sportsline.com. If you need a promo code, DM me on X. I'll take care of you. Sobel, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in relation to March Madness, this is my favorite trick every year. Go into your favorite watering hole at about noon on Thursday afternoon and just look at the bartender. Go, you put on the Valspar Championship up there. Is that cool? Can we do that? Maybe get there at 11:30. Try to beat the crowd.
We'll see how that goes. Hey, if you learned anything in this show, remember one thing. If you're playing golf this weekend and you're using a rangefinder, make sure not to use it in meters. Just remember that. That's a mistake that I would totally make. So one thing, producer,
you're shooting for your opponent, make sure it is in meters.
Oh, that's actually a really good idea. I want to thank producer Troy. Great job behind the scenes. For Patrick, McDonald, Sia Nejad, and Jason Sobel, I am Eric Cohen. And as I always like to say, let's hit it big. Good luck.